The day the world ended for Liam Harper, it began with a stolen mango. Not his mango. Mind you, he was a man who adhered to the quiet, orderly laws of his own grief, and stealing a mango would have been a seismic moral event. No, the mango belonged to a small, wiry Balinese man named Wyan, who had set up a fruit stall at the crossroads where the jungle road met the path to the beach. Liam had been walking that road every morning for 6 months, a ghost in sneakers, and every morning Wyan had offered him a slice of whatever was in season, a wedge of honeydew, a segment of snake fruit, a perfect, sun-warm mango. Every morning. Liam had refused with a tight, polite shake of his head, his eyes fixed on some middle distance that held more pain than paradise. He was in Bali to heal, or so his sister Claire had insisted when she bought him the one-way ticket. "You can't just stop living, Liam," she'd said, her voice thick with a frustration that masked her terror. Maya wouldn't want this. Maya, his wife of 8 years, the vibrant, laughing woman who had mapped the stars in their tiny apartment with glow-in-the-dark stickers, the woman who had been diagnosed with a rare, aggressive cancer 3 years ago and had fought it with ferocity that left them both hollowed out. Her death, 6 months prior, had not been a thunderclap but a slow dimming of light, leaving him in a perpetual, colorless twilight. Bali, with its technicolor greens, its incense-scented air, and its cacophony of life, felt like a cruel joke. It was a symphony he was forced to listen to with broken headphones. That morning, as he approached Wyan's store, he saw a commotion. A small crowd of local women in colorful sarongs were gathered, their voices a low, worried hum. Wyan was there, his usual cheerful demeanor replaced by a mask of panicked anguish. He was holding a small, makeshift cage woven from bamboo. Inside, a magnificent rooster with iridescent tail feathers lay on its side, one leg bent at a grotesque angle. It was an ayam jago, a fighting cock. Liam had learned, though the blood sport was officially banned, the birds were still raised with a fierce, reverent pride. This one was clearly Wyan's champion, his companion. Liam stopped, his routine broken. He watched as Wyan, with trembling hands, tried to straighten the bird's leg. The rooster let out a weak, rasping cry. A tourist couple in matching Bali bliss tank top snap photos from a distance, their faces a mixture of curiosity and mild disgust. Liam felt a familiar surge of something, not anger, not anymore, just a deep, bone-tired weariness of the world's casual cruelty. He was about to turn away, to retreat to his sterile, air-conditioned villa, when a small, calloused hand grasped his wrist. It was Wyan's wife, a woman whose name he'd never learned, her face etched with lines of worry. She looked up at him, her eyes wide and pleading. She pointed to the bird, then to a sign Liam had never really noticed before, handwritten on a piece of cardboard and tied to the store's bamboo pole. It was in Indonesian, but below it, in shaky English, were the words, "Vet, 15 kilometers. No car. Help. 15 kilometers." On a moped, with a dying rooster. The logical part of Liam's brain, the part that had been running his life on a loop of self-preservation, began constructing a wall of excuses. You don't know where the vet is. You don't speak the language. It's just a chicken. For God's sake. Your grief is a full-time job. You don't have time for a side gig rescuing a bird that was bred to fight. But then he looked at Wyan. He saw not just a man with a hurt animal, but a reflection of himself 6 months ago, holding Maya's hand in the sterile hospital room, feeling utterly helpless against a universe that was breaking something he loved. He saw the same desperate plea for someone, anyone, to help him fix the unfixable. "I'll drive," Liam heard himself say. The words felt foreign in his mouth, a language of action he'd forgotten. Wyan's head snapped up. A flicker of hope, fragile as a bird's wing, crossed his face. He gestured to his old, beat-up scooter leaning against a palm tree. Liam nodded. The woman carefully placed a rooster, cage and all, into a wicker basket that Wyan secured to the front rack with a bungee cord. The bird, in its pain, was silent. The ride was a baptism by fire. The road was a chaotic river of trucks, taxis, and other scooters, all moving with a fluid, terrifying logic that Liam couldn't comprehend. He drove slowly, carefully, acutely aware of the precious, broken cargo in front. Wyan sat behind him, his body a tense wire, occasionally leaning to murmur directions into Liam's ear. The The wind whipped the scent of cloves from a Kretek cigarette someone was smoking, the heavy sweetness of frangipani, and the salty tang of the sea. For the first time in months, Liam wasn't thinking about the past. He wasn't thinking about the future. He was just thinking about the next 10 feet of road, the next turn, the bird. They found the vet, a young woman named Dr. Arnie, in a small, immaculate clinic tucked behind the temple. Her calm, professional demeanor was a balm. She spoke excellent English and, after a quick examination, gave a prognosis. The leg is broken, but cleanly. I can set it, but there's a deeper problem. She pointed to a small, festering wound on the bird's chest, hidden beneath its feathers. This is infected. He will need antibiotics and a lot of rest. And, she paused, looking from Wyan to Liam. The spur, it has been cut too close. It is also infected. I may need to remove it. Wyan's face crumbled. He spoke rapidly in Indonesian to Dr. Arnie, his voice cracking. Liam caught only one word, repeated several times. Tajin. The cockfight. Dr. Arnie turned to Liam, her expression softening. He says this bird, his name is Jua, which means God. He was not just for fighting. He was a gift from his own father, who passed away last year. He says if Jua cannot be whole, if he cannot have his spur, then he is not Jua anymore. It is the source of his spirit. Liam looked at Wyan, seeing the layers of loss, the father, the connection, the living link to his past now bleeding out on a steel examination table. He understood that kind of symbolic amputation. He'd been living it. When Maya died, he'd felt like his own spur, the thing that made him, his capacity for joy, for laughter, for being a husband, had been cruelly cut away, leaving a festering wound of grief. Do the surgery, Liam said quietly. Save him. Do whatever it takes. Wyan began to protest, pulling a worn leather pouch from his sarong, a gesture of payment. Liam put a hand on his arm. It's okay, he said. He looked at Dr. Arne. How much? The cost was more than Liam's villa for a week. It was an amount that, 6 months ago, would have been allocated for a fancy dinner or a weekend getaway. Now, it was just numbers on a credit card, meaningless digits in the vast, empty ledger of his life. He paid it without hesitation. They waited for 3 hours in the clinic's small courtyard. A gecko chirped from the rafters. Wyan sat on a wooden bench, his head bowed, his fingers working a small, woven offering of palm fronds. He didn't look at Liam. He didn't speak. He just worked, his fingers moving with a meditative grace, weaving the fronds into a small, intricate basket, a Kanang sari. He filled it with a few marigold petals, a pinch of tobacco, a piece of candy. He then placed it on a small shrine in the corner, lit a stick of incense, and murmured a prayer. Liam watched, feeling like an intruder on something sacred. It was so different from his own sterile, private grief, this public, ritualized offering to the universe, a way of saying thank you for the good, please help with the bad. It was active. It was hope in physical form. When Dr. Arnie finally emerged, she was holding the wicker basket. Jua was inside, his leg splintered with a tiny piece of bamboo, his chest bandaged. He was alert, his black eyes bright, and he let out a low, throaty sound. Wyan rushed forward, a sob escaping him. He took the basket, peered in at his bird, and then, to Liam's utter astonishment, he turned and embraced him. It was not a Western, backslapping hug. It was a full, desperate, clinging embrace, the kind a father gives a son, the kind Liam had given Maya 1,000 times. Wyan's thin body shook with silent sobs against Liam's chest. Liam, frozen at first, slowly, hesitantly, raised his own arms and returned the embrace. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in 6 months, he felt something other than the cold, hard shell of his own grief. He felt the warmth of another human being. He felt gratitude. He felt, in a small, cracked way, useful. The ride back was different. The world seemed less hostile. The setting sun painted the rice paddies in shades of gold and emerald. Wyan, holding the basket on his lap, began to hum. It was a low, melodic tune, unfamiliar to Liam, but it vibrated through the scooter and into his own bones. When they reached the store, the small crowd had grown. Word had spread. As Liam pulled up, the women in sarongs let out a cheer. Wyand's wife rushed forward, tears streaming down her face as she took the basket. She looked at Liam, pressed her palms together in front of her chest, and bowed deeply. It was a semba, the Balinese greeting of profound respect. Liam didn't know what to do with it. He gave a clumsy, self-conscious nod and started to walk away, back toward the path to his villa, back toward the silence. "Pack Liam!" Wyand's voice called after him. Liam turned. Wyand was jogging toward him, a plastic bag in his hand. He thrust it into Liam's hands. Inside were a dozen mangoes, perfectly ripe, their skin blushing orange and red. Wyand smiled, a wide, genuine smile that erased the lines of anguish from his face. He didn't say thank you. He just said, "For tomorrow." That night, Liam sat on the terrace of his villa, the sound of the ocean a distant whisper. He took a mango from the bag. The skin was soft under his thumb. He bit into it. The juice exploded in his mouth, sweet, tart, impossibly alive. It was the first thing he had eaten with any real awareness in months. He looked at the bag of mangoes. For tomorrow. Not a promise, not a solution, just a small, tangible connection to the next day. For the first time, the thought of tomorrow didn't feel like a burden. He began to return to Wyand's stall. Not every day, but often. He'd sit on an overturned crate, and Wyand would teach him a few words of Balinese. Suksma, thank you, Besic, good. He learned that Wyand's name, given to the firstborn child, meant ancient or wise. He learned about his father, a farmer who had taught him to raise birds. He learned that Wyand's wife's name was Ketit, and that their son was studying tourism in Denpasar. In return, Liam found himself talking. It started small, the weather, the fruit, the traffic. Then, one afternoon, as they watched Dewar take his first tentative steps with his healed leg, Liam told him about Maya. He told him about the glow-in-the-dark stars, about her laugh, a sound like wind chimes in a storm, about the last 3 years, the chemo, the hope, the despair, about the quiet, sterile room at the end, and how he had held her hand, watching the light in her eyes fade until it was gone. He told him how he had felt like he'd been decapitated, not physically, but spiritually, like the thing that connected his head to his heart, his thoughts to his feelings, had been severed, leaving him a walking, functioning corpse. Wyand listened. He didn't offer platitudes. He didn't say she's in a better place, or time heals all wounds. When Liam finished, his voice raw, Wyand was quiet for a long moment. Then he pointed to a small temple visible across the rice paddies, its blackened thatched roofs a stark silhouette against the green. "My father," Wyand said slowly, choosing his English word with care. "He always say, grief is not a thing you keep in the head." He tapped his own forehead. "It is a weight for the heart. You try to carry it only in your mind. You become, how you say, pankung." He made a slicing motion across his neck. Pankung, the Balinese word for decapitation. A chill went through Liam. Pankung, he repeated, the word feeling heavy and familiar on his tongue. The Bali decapitation. Wyand nodded, a sad smile on his face. "Yes, you walk around. Head here." He pointed to Liam's head. "Heart here." He placed his hand over his own heart. "No road between. You think you are alive, but you are not whole." He took Liam's hand, a gesture so simple and unexpected it stopped Liam's breath. He placed Liam's hand over his own heart. "You must bring the grief down, pack Liam, from the head to the heart. You let it sit here. It is heavy. It hurts. But it is the only way to become whole again." Liam sat there, his hand over his own heart, feeling the steady, stubborn thrum of it beneath his ribs. He thought of the mangoes, the scooter ride, the embrace in the vet's courtyard. He thought of the absurd, transformative act of driving 15 kilometers to save a fighting cock. It wasn't a grand gesture. It was just a small, broken thing in a small, broken world. And yet, in that moment, he felt it. A connection. A thin, fragile thread, but a thread nonetheless, linking the ache in his head to the beat in his chest. He had been so focused on the spur that had been cut away, he'd forgotten the rest of the bird was still alive. The weeks that followed were not a magical cure. The grief was still there, a resident in his heart, but it was no longer foreign invader. He started to notice things again. The way the light filtered through the frangipani trees. the taste of fresh coconut water, the intricate patterns of the offerings left on every doorstep, a daily ritual of gratitude that said, I'm here, and this moment matters. He started helping wine at the store, learning the names of the fruits, the art of the perfect slice. Dua, now fully healed, would strut around their feet, a proud, one-spurred king, his purpose no longer to fight, but to simply exist, a source of quiet pride and affection. He began to help Dr. Ani, too, using his corporate skills to set up a simple bookkeeping system for her small clinic. He wasn't saving the world. He was just being useful, one small act at a time. Each act was a tiny stitch, reattaching the severed part to himself. The emotional climax came not with a bang, but with a small, woven basket. It was a month later, on the day of his departure. His 6-month visa was up, and Claire was waiting for him back in Chicago, her emails growing more frantic. He was packed, standing in the driveway of his villa, the taxi waiting. Wine and Ketut were there, Dua perched proudly on Wine's shoulder. Ketut pressed a small package into his hands. It was wrapped in banana leaf and tied with a string of dried palm fiber. He opened it. Inside was a Kanang sari, the same intricate, woven palm from basket Wine had made at the vet's clinic. But this one was different. Mixed in with the marigold petals and the tobacco was a small, polished piece of bamboo, the tiny splint that Dr. Ani had removed from Dua's leg a week prior. And nestled in the center, its tip wrapped in a tiny scrap of white cloth, was a rooster's spur, the infected one that Dr. Ani had removed. It was clean now, smooth and hard as a piece of dark amber. Liam looked up, confused. Wine placed his hand over Liam's, the same gesture he'd used weeks before. You helped Dua find his new way, he said, his voice thick. You helped him be whole without his spur. You showed us that what is lost is not what makes us. What we keep, what we grow, this is what makes us. He looked into Liam's eyes, his own brimming with tears. You take this, pack Liam. The spur, the splint, they are not things to fight with. They are things that healed. You take them home, to your country. You put them in your garden, or by your door. And you remember, you can be broken, and you can still be whole. Liam stared at the small offering in his hands. It wasn't a grand prize. It wasn't a solution to his grief. It was a piece of a rooster's leg, a piece of bamboo, and some flower petals. And it was the most beautiful, meaningful thing anyone had ever given him. It was a testament to a shared moment of humanity, a small, unexpected detour on a road of grief that had led him back to life. It was proof that compassion, even for a wounded bird, could create a bridge back to your own broken heart. He looked at Wine, at Ketut, at Dua, at the vibrant, chaotic, beautiful life of the island that had forced him to stop looking inward and start looking outward. He felt the weight in his hand, and for the first time, he recognized it as a weight of his own heart, fully connected, fully present, bruised but beating strong. The tears came then, not the dry, searing sobs of the past 6 months, but a warm, quiet release. He bowed, pressing his palms together in front of his chest. December. Suksma, he said, his voice breaking. Suksma, Wine. As the taxi wound its way toward the airport, Liam held a small banana leaf package on his lap. He looked out the window at the rice paddies, the temples, the people. The world was still the same. The grief was still there. But he was different. The head and the heart were finally speaking the same language. He thought of the title he would give to the story of his time here, a darkly humorous, deeply profound phrase Wine had given him, the Bali Decapitation. But it no longer meant a severing. For him, it had become something else entirely. It was a place where he had been broken apart, only to be put back together, piece by careful piece, by a mango seller, a wounded rooster, and a simple, transformative act of showing up for someone else. He was going home, not healed, but whole, and in his hands, he carried a tiny, perfect offering that proved the most powerful truth he'd ever learned, that the human heart, like a rooster's spirit, doesn't need its spur to fly. It just needs a reason to believe it still can.